Hello and welcome. I'm Jonathan Gilbert, reporting from Buckingham Palace in London. Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning monarch in British history, is no more. She passed away aged 96 at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Her eldest son, Charles, now King Charles III, expressed his grief and mourning, and that of his entire family. The Queen's body will return shortly to London, where it will lie in state, initiating a 10-day period of mourning.
Queen Elizabeth II, the longest-serving monarch, has passed away at the age of 96. The Queen breathed her last in her country residence, the Balmoral Castle in Scotland, surrounded by her family members. Prince William and Kate, Prince Charles and Camilla rushed to Balmoral Castle after doctors had expressed their concern over the Queen's deteriorating health. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle too rushed to Balmoral when Queen Elizabeth II was placed under medical supervision. The newly chosen Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Liz Truss, was one of the first to be informed of the monarch's passing, as is protocol. The message was also relayed to the public by Buckingham Palace, and flags were brought to half-mast within 10 minutes of the news. A 10-day mourning period is in effect now in the United Kingdom. On the 5th day, the Queen will lie in state for 3 days as members of the public visit to see her coffin. It is on the final day that the Queen's funeral will be held at Westminster Abbey as the world pays tribute to a monarch who dedicated her entire life to serving the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. The world is in mourning today. Long live the Queen. Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now is the former External Affairs Minister, Mr. Natwar Singh, who knew Queen Elizabeth rather well. I appreciate you joining us, Natwar Singh. Recall to us your memories of Queen Elizabeth as you knew her, your favorite memory of Queen Elizabeth.
Let me first begin by saying that at the moment there is a vacuum in the United Kingdom because His Majesty, the King who has been taken over as King only 24 hours ago, and the Prime Minister is in office for less than a week. They don't know each other. They have got to know each other well, understand the problems that are facing the United Kingdom, get to know what is happening in the world. They must get to know the world leaders, Commonwealth leaders, and that's a serious problem. Now, with regard to my association with late Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, I will tell you a story. In 1983, Her Majesty, the Queen and her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, came to Delhi. The Member of Parliament, H.N. Bahuguna, wrote a letter to Srimati Indira Gandhi saying that he had heard that the Queen was going to have an investiture in Rashtrapati Bhavan for giving the Order of Merit to Mother Teresa. The Order of Merit is confined to 24 individuals in the United Kingdom. Now, we don't allow anyone else besides the President of India to have an investiture in the Rashtrapati Bhavan. So the Prime Minister sent for me and he said, please find out from Rashtrapati Bhavan if what we have heard and what Sri Bahuguna has written to me is correct. Well, I inquired and the answer was yes. The Queen was indeed having an investiture in Rashtrapati Bhavan. So the Prime Minister said, go and see Mrs. Thatcher and convey to her that this is not our tradition, that anybody else besides the President of India can hold an investiture in Rashtrapati Bhavan. So I went to Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Her answer was that you know, it's going to be very difficult. The Queen has been informed, the invitations have gone out. I said, yes, they have, but they've gone out on the stationery of Buckingham Palace, which again is not acceptable. She said, but if the Queen is to be told to shift somewhere else, she will be inconvenienced. So I went back to the Prime Minister and I told her what Mrs. Thatcher had told me. So the Prime Minister thought about 30 seconds and said, Natwar, you go back to Mr. Thatcher and tell her from me that if the investiture takes place, questions will be asked in Parliament and the Queen's name will be dragged in. So I conveyed this to Mrs. Thatcher and there was no investiture.
Queen Elizabeth, who marked 70 years on the throne just this year, was the longest-serving monarch in British history. She surpassed even her great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, who herself reigned for 63 and a half years. Here's a look at the life and times of Elizabeth.
The death of Queen Elizabeth II has been announced, bringing to an end the longest reign of any British monarch. Born on April 21, 1926, the princess had never expected to ascend to the throne. But after her uncle, King Edward VIII, abdicated in 1936, the crown passed to her father, George VI.
My whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
Tragic news.
She was just 25 when she became Queen Elizabeth II in 1952 on the death of her father.
And following were the heavily veiled, grieving figures.
She was crowned the next year at Westminster Abbey. Winston Churchill was the first of her 15 prime ministers, and during her 70-year reign, there were 14 US presidents. The young Queen Elizabeth spent much of the early years saying farewell to the British Empire amassed by her forebears from Kenya to Hong Kong to Barbados. However, she remained the monarch of 15 countries and head of the Commonwealth. Her own personal union to Prince Philip stayed solid for 74 years until his death in April 2021. The couple had 4 children, beginning with Charles, who was born in 1948 and who now succeeds her to the throne. The Queen's life became one of public duty, attending thousands of official engagements across the globe. She was loved and respected by many. Millions turned out to celebrate her 70th year on the throne in June 2022. The Queen herself had to step back from some of the partying due to recurring health problems. Commentators agreed that she came across as a dignified, down-to-earth and witty woman. Critics said she was too solemn and distant, a woman recognised by millions but known by hardly anyone. Away from her public duties, horse racing and her beloved corgis were lifelong passions, as was the outdoors, like her estate at Balmoral in Scotland, where she was more at home in tweeds than tiaras.
1992.
Her reign was rarely plain sailing. The 40th anniversary of her accession was a year that she famously described as one of disaster and misfortune.
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
3 of her 4 children's marriages had failed, and there was a major fire at her Windsor Castle royal residence. The death of Charles's ex-wife, Princess Diana, in 1997 was even more harmful to the family's public prestige.
As your queen and as a grandmother, I say from my heart. First, I want to pay tribute to Diana myself. She was an exceptional and gifted human being.
In years later, some of the damage was repaired by events like the marriage of her grandson William to commoner Kate Middleton in 2011, watched by billions around the world. But with Queen Elizabeth's death, the monarchy's future is likely to face scrutiny like never before. Polls suggest Charles will be a far less popular British monarch. And there are other challenges. Prince Harry and his American wife Meghan giving up their royal duties amid accusations of racism has robbed the institution of 2 of its most popular global figures. and the US sex abuse lawsuit against Prince Andrew, which he paid to settle while admitting no wrongdoing, also left its mark. The death of Britain's Queen Elizabeth finally hands on the duties and heavy responsibility of the monarchy, a task to which she devoted her own life to maintain its popularity in the face of seismic political, social and cultural change.
Charles is now King Charles III of the United Kingdom and 14 other realms. He is the oldest monarch to accede to a lineage that goes back some 1,000 years.
Prince Charles is now king. With the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, on Thursday, Charles has finally become King of the United Kingdom and 14 other countries, including Australia, Canada and New Zealand, ending a wait of more than 70 years, the longest by an heir in British history. His wife Camilla becomes Queen Consort, but without the sovereign's powers. Just as Queen Elizabeth became monarch the moment after her father, King George VI, died, King Charles too took over as the role of British monarch immediately. King Charles, the oldest person to ever assume the British throne, has been preparing for the crown his entire life. Unlike his mother, who refused to publicly discuss her views, Charles has delivered speeches and written articles on issues close to his heart, such as climate change and green energy. He also was the first heir not educated at home, the first to earn a university degree, and the first to grow up in the ever-intensifying glare of the media as deference to royalty faded. The eldest of Elizabeth's 4 children, Charles was the longest-serving Prince of Wales in British history. He will be succeeded by his firstborn, Prince William, Duke of Cambridge, followed by Prince William's firstborn, Prince George. Never, perhaps, an heir has been more ready for the crown. But the question is, will King Charles III be as loved as Queen Elizabeth II was? Bureau Report, India Today.
Of course there were good times, but the Queen's 70-year reign also saw its fair share of scandal. Inquiries into her tax affairs, divorces and untimely deaths amongst the numerous controversies. And between Brexit and the unseemly business of Prince Andrew's child sex allegations, last year saw the Queen face yet another annus horribilis.
Queen Elizabeth II was a very private person living in a very public life. Mired in many debates and the target of questions, some justified, some vicious, and some unwanted. Of all the scandals, the one revolving around Queen Elizabeth's daughter-in-law Princess Diana and her heir Prince Charles, and the third in their marriage, was the most vicious. The royal marriage of Prince Charles and Diana in 1981 attracted worldwide attention. It was a fairy tale wedding, but within a decade the bubble burst. There were tabloid reports of affairs, and in 1992, Charles and Diana officially announced their separation. 3 years later, Diana sat down for a tell-all solo interview with journalist Martin Bashir to talk about the immense pressure of public life and her struggles with self-harm, postpartum depression and bulimia.
Mrs. Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of your marriage?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded. Yes, I came from a family.
She admitted being unfaithful to Charles. The ugliness ended abruptly in 1997 when Princess Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris. Queen Elizabeth's own marriage also was mired in controversy. In 1947, as soon as her engagement was announced to Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, the young royal couple was in the middle of a scandal. Questions were raised of Prince Philip's family's lack of standing after being exiled from Greece, and also for his sister's marriages to Nazi-linked Germans. The Nazi link came back haunting the Queen decades and generations later in 2005. Her grandson Prince Harry sparked outrage when he went to a costume party dressed as a Nazi. Then a 20-year-old, the prince quickly released a statement of apology. Queen Elizabeth's another big moment of embarrassment was the Megxit. When her grandson Prince Harry announced his engagement to Meghan Markle, the world applauded the British monarchy for transforming and becoming modern. Meghan was non-British, of a mixed race, and an actor. But everything went awry, and in 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announced that they will be stepping back from senior royal duties. The couple, with their just-born child Archie, moved to California in America. A year later, in March 2021, Meghan and Harry gave a tell-all interview to Oprah Winfrey about their rift with the royal family, revealing one bombshell after another. They alleged that the members of the royal family had concerns and conversations about how dark Archie's skin could be before he was born. Meghan also opened up about having suicidal thoughts. The wealth of Queen Elizabeth created an outpour of discontent in 1992, and the Prime Minister John Major announced that the Queen will pay taxes from 1993. Her wealth came back in controversy in 2021 when reports alleged that the Queen successfully lobbied the government to change the draft law in order to conceal her embarrassing private wealth from the public. The arrangement, which was concocted in the 1970s, was used in effect to create a state-backed shell corporation that placed a veil of secrecy over the Queen's private shareholdings and investments until at least 2011. The biggest scandal in the history of the royal family turned out to be Queen Elizabeth's son, Prince Andrew. He was allegedly accused of sexual assault by Virginia Giuffre, a minor, during the time of the incident. Virginia claimed that she was forced to have sexual relations with this prince when she was a minor in 3 separate geographical locations. She accused the prince and his billionaire friend Jeffrey Epstein of keeping her as a sex slave. Prince Andrew said he had no regrets about his association with Epstein. The statement received enormous public backlash. In early 2022, as the civil suit against him was still on, Andrew was stripped of his honorary military roles as well as his royal patronage. He was barred from using the title His Royal Highness in official settings. It certainly has not been all rainbows and sunshine for Queen Elizabeth II. Yet she managed to lead all the public service duties for 69 long years.
In 1997, as part of her tour to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Indian independence, the Queen visited Amritsar's Jallianwala Bagh, the controversial site of a 1919 massacre, where British troops opened fire upon thousands of unarmed civilians. And although the Queen expressed her regret at the incident, she stopped short of a full
from one of the bloodiest slaughters in colonial history, which unfolded in Amritsar in 1919, when her grandfather, King George V, was the Emperor of India.
It was the Queen's third visit to India and her first to Amritsar. Punjab's reaction was ambivalent. Some staged protests, but many turned out in force to welcome the Queen.
School children lined the streets with drums and bands. Amritsar wore a festive look.
It's a very good day in Amritsar. The people of Punjab, people of Amritsar like Queen to come Amritsar.
The reception couldn't have been warmer at Darbar Sahib, the Golden Temple. Rules were relaxed. The Queen, after she had removed her shoes, was allowed to enter the sacred compound wearing white socks instead of walking barefoot.
Queen Elizabeth's 1997 visit to Amritsar marked a high point in the India-UK ties when the Buckingham Palace moved to smoothen sensitivities over Britain's colonial legacy. Harmeet Shah Singh in New Delhi for India Today.